The war in Vietnam was the longest and most unpopular military conflict in American history. The first large-scale deployment of ground troops in Vietnam took place in 1965. Initially, only regular troops were committed, but as the U.S. involvement escalated, more and more conscripts were drafted, and their average age was just 19. For most of them, it was their first time out of the U.S. For many, there would be no return. The M16 was first issued to frontline forces in 1963. Early weapons performed well. By the time they saw extensive service in the field, they were plagued with problems. The M16 had been sold as a weapon that required a little cleaning or maintenance. The problems were caused by individual soldiers who did not look after their weapons well enough. But once proper cleaning procedures were instituted, the weapon could be relied on. The M16 became one of the icons of the Vietnam War, providing U.S. Army grunts with effective personal firepower. Vietnam was a confusing war for young U.S. soldiers. Many lived on massive bases close to major towns in South Vietnam. Life could be easy, but there was always a constant fear of ambush or booby traps. Life was very different for the rifleman in the field. On unfamiliar terrain, he faced a determined enemy, mostly indistinguishable from the innocent citizens the troops were there to protect. Vietnam became the birthplace of the air cavalry concept. The Americans made widespread use of the helicopter for both transport and combat. Helicopters were often the only way of inserting troops into the trackless Vietnamese jungles, mountains, and swamps. U.S. troops conducted huge search and destroy missions, supported by massive artillery bombardment and close air support. Forces of battalion strength or larger swept through a predetermined area where enemy activity had been reported. But as U.S. forces did not actually hold the ground they seized for any length of time, these operations mostly failed to eliminate the Viet Cong threat. The VC guerrillas were both intelligent and resourceful. They constructed enormous tunnel complexes to hide from U.S. and South Vietnamese forces. To combat this, small teams of U.S. soldiers were trained as tunnel rats. Their mission was to crawl through the dark tunnels in search of their enemy, equipped with only a pistol and a flashlight. It was an extremely dangerous and demanding job that required nerves of steel. In the end, the U.S. withdrew from Vietnam without a clear victory. The U.S. soldier was more than a match for his lightly equipped, poorly trained opponent. But military operations were constrained by political considerations, and American soldiers were not allowed to operate with full military freedom. The U.S. grunts won most of their battles, but their politicians cost them the war and the lives of almost 50,000 of their brothers in arms.